What does Indigo Park Chapter 1 hide off camera in Jetstream Junction, the Rambley Rush minigame, and Mollie's landing pad? In Indigo Park, you're guided by a rather talkative digital mascot as you explore the ruins of a once thriving amusement park. Though the place has been practically reduced to rubble, that won't stop us from diving in and discovering the many secrets hidden within. Today we'll be taking a look out of bounds at some things we're not meant to see, like how Rambley Rush's boss fight works off camera, as well as Mollie Macaw, who can't keep her head on straight. We'll also be breaking stuff as we go, so I hope you enjoy today's game-breaking look at Indigo Park. Now before we jump in, I'd like to do a quick recap of everything we'll be covering, that way we're all on the same page. So after getting the key in Lloyd's main stage, we head across the park and unlock Jetstream Junction. And once inside, we head upstairs to find that Rooftop Races has been destroyed. So instead, we'll make our way to Mollie's landing pad. From here, we must open the doors by solving a puzzle before we can continue. Heading into the slide on our left, we'll spot Mollie Macaw as she runs by the play area and vanishes, only for us to spot her again in the slide ahead. After solving the puzzle and heading upstairs, Mollie will appear behind a door and begin chasing after us. She pops out of several slides as we go, making it difficult to fully outrun her. We eventually reach the staff-only room, where she'll be crushed under a steel door behind us, losing her head in the process. After this, we head through some hallways leading us outside, and as we reach the entrance to Oceanic Odyssey, Chapter 1 comes to a close. Recap aside, let's head back to the start of Jetstream Junction. So as we arrive, we'll load into a completely separate section of this massive theme park. Here we can more clearly see the airplane hangar known as Jetstream Junction. It's a large blue warehouse connected to a surprisingly larger building. When taking a look out of bounds, we can see a handful of assets beyond the walls of this map, including some vines that look to be attached to a wall or building, and a small length of chain dangling in the shape of a candy cane. Of course, there's also the Ferris wheel and clock seen in the main hub as well, except these are meant to be seen over the walls to add a sense of depth and continuity to these separate levels. While looking around out of bounds, I found a couple of white cubes stored beneath the map, floating at slightly different heights. I also stumbled across the button used to open the door to the landing pad, until the player heads upstairs to Rooftop Races. This button is kept out of bounds so that we cannot enter the next section of the game early. After that dialogue with Rambley takes place, this button will then be moved inside the map so that we may open the door and continue. Speaking of Rooftop Races, we can have a closer look at the wreckage, where we'll find various assets and items scattered among the rubble. There are a few trash cans and ride cars placed throughout, but nothing else. Now before we continue onward to Mollie's landing pad, let's head over to the arcade cabinet and have a look at Rambley Rush. In this minigame, reminiscent of FNAF's arcade games, we play as Rambley in a side-scrolling platformer. Our goal is to find Mollie Macaw, who has crashed somewhere in Rambleberry Woods, stomping on enemies Mario style as we press onward. Eventually, we find Mollie wrecked in a grassy clearing, only to be confronted by a skunk named Salem. She throws a potion at Mollie, seemingly turning her against us, which leads into a short boss fight. Keeping with the theme of classic platformers, we must jump on her head a few times in order to defeat her, with each phase making her more aggressive. Once she's beaten, the game glitches out and comes to an end, giving the player a new collectible to carry with them as it does. Now, as we restart this minigame, you may be surprised to learn that we're no longer in Jetstream Junction. When the player starts this minigame, they're actually loaded into a completely separate map. And although we're locked into only sideways movement, this is a fully 3D space that we can explore freely with our camera. This method isn't actually uncommon, as developers often do this when creating side-scrolling platformers. Games like Night in the Woods or even Cuphead appear to take place in a 2D environment, are in fact occupying a three-dimensional space. This map, as you can see, is no different, as we can explore this massive landscape as much as we want. At the very beginning, there's a tunnel that we supposedly came from, and beyond this black barrier, we can see that it simply leads out of the map between these rocks. Just behind the area where the player starts is a small lake surrounded by trees and foliage, and a massive rocky formation towers behind it. Something else you may have noticed is that the score and free play overlays are not directly tied to the camera, but instead connected to Rambley himself. As we jump around this map, we'll see these two assets moving around with him. Now, while exploring this map, there are a couple of interesting things I found. To start, there's a hidden pathway beneath the first mountain that leads to a caged up Mollie Macaw. I had no idea this was here during my first playthrough, and when she's approached, this game will freeze and reset. Just beside the cage, floating outside the play area, we'll find something else that's pretty interesting. There's a small box made of 4 intersecting planes that contains 2 evil versions of Mollie Macaw. These are the entities used in the first 2 phases of her fight, and they're already active and moving out of bounds. As the boss fight takes place, place, the needed version will be moved to the end of the stage and take the previous version's place. Right next to this box, we'll find a trophy as well, but I'm not certain as to why it's here, considering I never saw it during my playthrough. Now, as we reach the end of this arcade game, we'll find Mollie alongside her crashed plane. But something you may have not noticed is Salem hiding in the bushes. When viewed up close, we can see a lot of Z fighting going on as she flickers between two different sprite animations. When we reach the third stage of Mollie's fight, she'll fly just above the ground as particles fall from above. This model is also present on this stage at all times. Only this third version of Evil Mollie is stored just beneath the boss fight location instead. As the boss fight comes to an end, Mollie will break into small particles where we're then sent back to Jetstream Junction. From here, we can head into Mollie's landing pad to continue forward. Now, as we enter this big puzzle area, I took a peek at the level around us, and it appears that we're trapped in a giant box with clouds painted on the walls. One of the first things I noticed out of bounds was a small cylinder textured completely black. Now, this is just a hunch, but I believe this is used to block the inaccessible slides in these playground maps. There's one just outside the play area here, as well as one far beyond the giant box surrounding us. Next, I move the camera into the slide on our left, where you'll see that Mollie is already loaded in beyond the netting. She's in a perpetual loop of her walking animation, but she's remaining completely still. Typically, when we enter the small jungle gym area, she'll walk past us and up this small ramp. She then vanishes out of sight, and this animation is too fast for us to properly catch up with her. However, we can follow her with the camera, and in doing so, we can watch as she climbs the small ramp and hops into the ball pit down below. She then, of course, unloads directly after. That way, she can't be spotted in the event we chase after her. So just up ahead in this blue slide, we'll find yet another instance of Mollie Macaw, this time staring directly at us from a less than comfortable distance. When triggered, she'll climb backwards up the slide, and it's kind of creepy just how quickly she can move like this. If we restart this area and follow her with the camera though, we can watch as she rapidly crawls her way in reverse to the top of the slide, frequently clipping through the slide as she does. Eventually, she reaches the top, ultimately unloading when she does. As we continue on this path, we'll eventually come to an orange slide, where we can find Mollie engaged in her favorite hobby, peeking around corners. From another angle, she simply moves off to the side, completely dislocating her shoulder as she does, before setting it back into place and disappearing. This is truly a bird up moment. Now, as we complete this puzzle and head down the big slide, we're actually taken to yet another new map. As you can see, we're still in a giant room with blue walls covered in clouds, but we're in a completely different location. I can't say for absolute sure, but it appears that this map is a lot larger than the previous one. Now, there are only a couple of things hidden out of bounds on this map, the first being this large plane floating outside the chase area. It's covered in a brick texture that is used throughout this chapter, but I'm not sure why it's in this particular map. While inspecting this strange bit of flooring, that's when I spot something a bit odd. Just beneath the end of the hallway where Mollie Macaw meets her doom, we can find her out of bounds just dying repeatedly. And it's honestly kind of hilarious, despite how morbid that sounds. She lunges forward like she's trying to attack us, just to fall flat on her face a moment later. And if that weren't bad enough on its own, her entire head then pops off like a cheap toy and rolls forward. We saw this concept used previously in Lloyd's main stage, where his jump scare model was preloaded beneath the theater. Just like in that instance, this animated model is here for when Mollie reaches the staff-only room, where the door is supposed to shut on her. There are no doors to be seen here though, so it appears that her head just pops off for no reason. I almost hate to say it, but glorious! So in this section of Mollie's landing pad, the door ahead of us leads into a small hallway, and this is where the chase with Mollie begins. When we walk toward the doors, they begin sliding open, and she forces them apart, leading into a lengthy segment where she aggressively pursues us. If we move the camera beyond the door and trigger her, we'll see that she appears as soon as we get close enough. She then forces her way in and runs us down. But she's not actually chasing us. In this instance, she's programmed to run to the slide and catch us if we haven't gone through it. But if we delete the doors that close behind us, we can sidestep her and watch as she just kind of freezes by the slide. We can no longer get past her though, so we'll have to accept our demise here. In an attempt to bypass this chase altogether, I deleted the barrier in the slide and tried to enter, but I was unable to go through it. When I triggered the chase though, the game went crazy and sent me to a different hallway, then warped me straight back. I then of course got jump scared. Now, if we take a look at our jump scare animation in bullet time, we can watch as she pecks at us, and we'll see a huge splatter of blood as she does. It's honestly pretty horrifying to watch in slow motion. What's most interesting about this jump scare though, is where it takes place. When Mollie manages to catch and jump scare you anywhere beyond the first slide, we'll actually be warped into a completely disconnected hallway where it plays out. This false hallway is actually floating beneath the rest of the map, and for obvious reasons, it doesn't lead anywhere. There's also a teal pipe out here sitting sitting on top of some checkered flooring, but I'm not sure about their purpose. As we move forward in this chase, Mollie will appear in several locations to cut us off. When this occurs, you can see that she simply loads in out of sight and walks through a black barrier. As we drop down into the bottom floor, we can see that our enemy is already loaded in down below waiting for us. At the end of the chase, we can view her death animation in bullet time, and it's a lot more gruesome this time around for obvious reasons. When we try to leave, the doors will close in our face because we're not Royal Rangers. We are obviously big and strong enough, so I broke down the door with my massive guns to check it out, only to find a black barricade and nothing more. As we step out into the park once more, there are a few buildings surrounding us that we can't usually access. On the right side, there is a large set of wooden doors that do not open, and when deleting them, we can see that it's strictly cosmetic. There's a brick wall here, and no secrets to be found. There's also a big building to our left, and this one doesn't lead to a brick wall. Instead, there's a large room here with nothing inside. Before we move on, we can have a look at this map from an aerial view, where we'll see it takes place on a large piece of grassy flooring. What's interesting is that Jetstream Junction is still loaded in on the other side of the map. It's looking a bit broken at the moment, but it's still a pretty big chunk of the park we previously explored. Now we head around the bend that leads us to Oceanic Odyssey. This is where the chapter ends, but not before we get a peek at Finley. We barely get any time to look at him though, so I broke down one of the walls to avoid triggering the credits and walked around to the other side. Here we can see Finley in all his glory, just kind of floating here. He's pretty huge and seems to be covered in what looks like cuts or just blood. His eyes are also bloodshot and creepily lack pupils. He's a terrifying creature, and I can only imagine what he'll be capable of in the following chapters. Because he's only animated for a short cutscene, he is entirely harmless, even if you walk straight into him. But with that, that's everything I found hidden off camera in Indigo Park Chapter 1. I hope you enjoyed today's look behind the scenes of the spooky amusement park. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you did, and I'll see you all in my next game-breaking video. Cheers!